So we can have a first look at Picasso Designer. Let's drag this onto our sheet, and we're able to then start building out our visualization. So first, let's just add some data for an example. So in this case, I'm going to add a dimension and a measure to get started with. Now, in order to get going, we need to add some scales and some axes to this particular chart. Now, this follows the principles of Picasso in terms of the chart design, but you don't need to understand the specification because all the options are available in the properties panel. So here we're going to have our scale for our X direction. We're going to specify the dimension for that. We're going to add another scale for the Y and put our measure onto that. Now I know that we need to invert that and specify that it's a linear one, and we want it always to include the 0 value. Now the scales are done, we can add some axes to the chart. So let's specify that we want an x-axis and we want that at the bottom, and we'll add another which will be our y-axis on the left. So now these have been included, and we can start to add some layers. So now we can add numerous different layers to this chart. So here we're going to first of all just add a line chart. So I'm going to give it a name, give it a name of line 1. So it's going to be a single line. Our major axis scale is going to come from SX. That data is from the category, that's Y, and the measure. And there we have a line chart that's been developed. Now I see that we've got some null data in here, so we can just go in, exclude nulls as we would on any standard chart, and use those capabilities as we expect them in any Qlik Sense visualization. Now actually this line chart isn't quite what I'm after, so actually I'd like to change this to be a box. Now in this particular case I'm going to change its name to be bar 1. I want it to be a bar chart, so my major scale is X, minor scale is Y, and the end field for this is going to be the sum of sales, which then gives us the height of our bar chart. So now we're continuing to adapt and develop our chart, adding more and more capabilities as we go. Perhaps we'll go back to our scale X and actually say I'd like to pad that out a little bit and add some white space, so we can just adapt that property. Now this is fine. This gives us some capability that we otherwise would have had on a standard chart. So how can we add more to this to take us beyond what we can do in a standard Qlik Sense object? Well, let's add some more data first. So here I want to get a view of the profit. So we're going to look at sum of profit, and I'm also going to have a look at costs. So let's get the average costs there. So now we're building out more and more options. So let's add some axes for this. Now the scale for my profit I'm going to leave on the sum of sales because that's works the same, but I do want to include a new scale which is for the average cost. So let's add that in. I'm going to invert that, make it linear, and make it baseline at 0. Now I want to add another axis here for this new scale, and we're going to add that one to the right hand side. So now we're adding that one in for average costs. So let's go back into our layers now, and we're going to add in a layer. So in this particular case, I'd like to add in a line and area layer, but I want to have this as a area layer. So we change this to area, change our x-axis, and just fill in these properties. Now some of this seem slightly repetitive, but this does give us a lot more flexibility when building some quite complex charts. So let's add this in for the average area, and so now we're beginning to get bars with areas and more complex charts than otherwise would be possible. So let's go in here now so we can actually start manipulating some of the properties. So actually I'd like it to have a curved line to it. The line color, we're going to make that yellow, make that line thicker, and the fill, I'm going to have that as very light grey, and we're going to bring the opacity down on that particular layer. And the line for this one, I'm actually going to make it dashed. So this is quite an extreme example of what we're doing, but the purpose is to show some of the capabilities of the extension. So now I'd actually like that to be behind my bar, so I can just change the order of those and it'll automatically render in the order that I want. Likewise, let's just make this a bit more streamlined and bring in the fact that we want to, so in terms of this bar, change some of the properties. So here I want to make those bars a different color. So now as we make more and more of these properties, we can specify what we are after. Now it might be that actually I want to change the sorting, so again we're just using the standard properties that you would expect from a Qlik Sense visualization, but we've got a lot of control over what we want to do. So let's actually expand this particular axis here, and we're going to expand that 0.01, and that just gives us a little bit of extra headroom at the top of my bar. So a lot of fine-grained control that we can bring in. Now obviously all of this is powered by Picasso natively, so this is just giving you a much faster and easier way to explore the capabilities of Picasso in a visualization. Now while we've got this particular one here, we'll add one more layer, and we're going to add in a point layer. Let's add this to our chart. Put our dimension on our x-axis. Our y-axis is we're going to use the same as the sales. And in this particular case, I'm going to look at the sum of profit on each of those. And in terms of the size of those, we'll just reuse the other average cost information that we put on previously, and say that actually we want this to get the right one. Change the color of this so that we're going to make this different. Again, just adding more and more of these capabilities to that chart itself. So now we're done with that, and we've built out our Picasso chart. We're now able to also leverage the fact that we can integrate this with the Qlik and the selection capabilities of the product. So if I'm interested in just exploring sportswear and menswear, I can make those selections, confirm those selections, and now we've built our own custom chart that we've integrated with the selection capabilities of Qlik that will work natively in the associative engine with any other visualization in your application. So let's actually explore building in another example here as we go. So let's make it smaller. We'll add in another Picasso object, and in this particular case I'm going to add my dimension that I'm interested in, customer country, and we're going to have a look at the cost. We'll have a look at average costs per country, but in this particular case I want to add a scale for the country, and we're going to add a layer. In this case we're going to add a pie layer. Our arc size field is going to be the average costs, and our color scale in this particular case, so let's just go and add the scale that we need, color, and we're going to do average costs in terms of the nope, we're going to do customer country for the color, specify that, color scale there. So now we've got each of those. We're going to add a small padding angle to that, the outer radius, bring that in a little bit, make it into a donut. We'll add a small corner radius to each of those objects, so we can see we've got quite a lot of control in the object here that we see. Now if I go back to my docked items, and in this particular case I add a legend, and I'm going to put the color legend in with the countries, and we're going to leave that there docked, and so now that color has been specified for each of those items. And click done, and we can then make selections on particular countries, and we see our other application, other visualizations manipulating and adapting to that selection. Likewise, as we make those changes, everything updates, everything interacts and works as you would expect from a Qlik visualization. So there's a preview of the Picasso Designer extension available on Qlik branch and GitHub, currently in beta and adding more features all the time.